That always makes me laugh.
Because I feel like someone's going to come sliding across the stage like a late night talk show host, and it's like, "Hey, coming up next."
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome
That's
back
me.
to Getting to Unstuck. We're so glad you're here. And every episode of Getting to Unstuck, we talk and we have 20-minute coffee conversations, and we talk about getting unstuck in work and life. And today is Tuesday as we're recording this, and we like to call it Teamwork Tuesday. And today we're going to be talking about what it means if the wheels are a little wobbly on your team. So we're going to dive into some of the challenges that teams face when those wheels are not quite aligned, from power struggles to navigating the complexities of welcoming new members, which is a good thing, but can be challenging, and dealing with internal conflicts, which is just part of, if you have a pulse, you're probably going to experience that in some way. So let's buckle up as we roll through some real world strategies, because we're going to bring balance back to our teams. All right.
Yeah.
So good morning, Colin and Carol. So glad.
Hey, good
Good
morning.
morning.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what happens. First, let's kind of give some definition, not kind of, let's give some definition to what it means if someone is listening and they're like, I wonder if our team is having some wobbles. How would we define that for the purpose of this conversation and to help our listeners understand?
Yeah, look, I think you probably feel it intuitively, right? But it's at those times when there's, let's say, an expansion in a team or a contraction in a team, people are maybe not communicating properly. You might feel slightly on edge. There's all sorts of ways that it manifests. But last week we spoke about gangs and teams, and sometimes it can feel like a turf war, right? Where there may be issues of seniority or hierarchy or any other sort of divisive element that might be upsetting the delicate balance of the team, right? And I think one of the things that we should recognize and highlight is that teams are very much organic living things, right? And there's a chemistry to them, right? There's a biology to them. There's a chemistry to them. It's much like putting together a great cocktail. The ingredients matter. The amounts matter. The how you mix it matters. Like teams need to be treated in that way, and they aren't. And that's when when they're not, you feel this sort of out of sorts, if you like,
yes.
and really you see quite a bit of negativity around. So that's how you kind of can see it and feel it in your gut. And it's happened to all of us, and I'm sure it's happened to all three of us here for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. And it erupts, things get to a point, and then somebody has an outburst, or somebody else is starting to feel like they don't have a voice. And there's often an event, something that happens that creates awareness that, oh, we got to deal with this. And that's the point where if you're there already, you recognize it, and then it's starting to look back. But that happens. What happens then is sometimes it's the blame game. It's like, oh, well, if so-and-so hadn't joined the team, we were all good before that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It goes on like that.
Yeah.
So I worked with a team that was, they had a fantastic mission. They were a nonprofit, and they were committed to raising up young people in marginalized communities. There was absolutely no question that everyone on the team was completely dedicated to that mission. Fabulous people, absolutely wanted to make a difference in their communities. But what they realized is they were going off in a lot of different directions. And the leader of the team, the director of the organization, had kind of lost some of the communication that was going on. And when I was brought in to do some intervention with the team, we had to go back and look at individuals. And that was an interesting exercise, because we thought we were going to be looking at the team as a whole. But what happened was there was a lot of individual upsets that had not been unearthed.
Ooh. Yeah.
on Earth. We keep going back to biology. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something to well, maybe we'll do that in another session, the biology of teams and how they work together.
Well, and it is, I mean, we're mentioning this when we were talking about this conversation about the idea. And I had the idea of that it can feel like when something is not working, there's a bit of a risk analysis that I think each of us as individuals do in our head about almost like a tolerance level. We do an analysis about our tolerance level in it as team members. And I have been the leader of teams that have had things like that not working. And there's an analysis you do where you think about how you, and sometimes you can be the kind of person, I have been that kind of person where it's like, well, I think I can still tolerate it. Like you're not telling, that's not a conscious choice you're making, but you're tolerating things because you wonder if it's there, you either hope it's going to just magically take care of itself. Very thinking. But really so much of it, when we can't see it, it's like what we talked about in our conversation, where it's like if there's a rock in the garden, the rock we just think about that's just a rock that's sitting on the earth. But really that rock is on top of something that's obscuring the view. So if we were to lift up that rock, we'd see that there is an entire ecosystem that's going on under that rock. Just as valuable and just as important, but has been hidden from us from the outside perspective. So I think that when we're talking about wobbly wheels on a team, it can mean a lot of different things. And it's not a comment on whether it's good or bad. It's just more a comment of the state of something. So it doesn't have to have any personal sting to it.
Well, and teams are a part of a larger organization almost always. I mean, sometimes the team is it, right? But usually what we see is that teams are put together as part of a much bigger organization. So, Colin, you've been working with an organization that is really quite big, but there's a smaller piece of it.
Well, I think that's something that often we forget when we're putting together these organic teams, right? That notwithstanding being in a small, medium, large organization that might have very clear mission, vision, values, and sort of a brand philosophy, if you like, but every team within that organization has to. They should, or they might adopt their own kind of mini mission or team commitment statement that everybody can rally around. And because, for example, in that organization that you're speaking about, there's one team that looks into the past. There's teams that are doing so many disparate things. But if you can get people, if it is wobbly, right? Because in this instance, it's growing exponentially. But if you can get everybody in that team to agree to a commitment about this is how we're going to work together, this is how we're going to treat our clients, this is how we're going to treat our fellow team members, this is the desired outcome that we would like, and it's connected to the bigger mission statement, but it's theirs. It's something that team of 5, 10, 15, or 20 can all connect with. And then once you've got a shared kind of vision that you can all point to, right, then it's a question of, well, how do we communicate? How do we make sure that we're talking to each other? So you create the context for safe spaces, safe conversations, much like a coaching dialogue, right, where it's confidential and it's safe and there's no judgment. And so you can have the team rally around an overarching mission, but then you can have them really become more cohesive around this is what we really want to do in this team, right? This is how we are going to act. This is how we're going to be. This is the way we want. These are the sort of the desired outcomes that we want. And once I think you can agree on a shared mission, something that you can hold dear when you go to the office, then the wheels should begin to align. That chemistry, if you like, can become more alkaline and less sort of reactive and challenging.
Right. I love the term micro mission, Colin. I think perfect for this because the micro mission then aligns with the bigger organizational mission, and everybody feels like they are contributing their part to it. And it isn't
Sure.
like that team is a separate outlier. They actually are part of the bigger organization, but internally they have a real sense of who they are
Exactly.
and why they are committed in that smaller group.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think organizations forget that sometimes, that they can be, so different, notwithstanding being in one organization with one strategic plan. But
Yeah.
understanding that diversity, I think, is one of the first steps in making the wheels less wobbly, right?
Yeah. So can we talk about that for a minute? Can we talk about that tension that we find in our current workplace culture and with teams around balancing the needs and maybe the unspoken needs of the individuals with the collective mission and purpose of why the team exists, and how to hold both of those things, how to hold a safe and accountable space for those two things, because they are separate, but they can work to they should. And in a healthy team, when the wheels are not wobbly, they do work together. But often we find that one it's often holding the balance of power. So what are some words of wisdom and some insights that we can give people that are leading teams right now around that?
I think it begins with courage. Because there has to be some bravery involved to be willing to be able to lift that rock and look. Because if you know that your wheels are not aligned, then the steering becomes off, right? You can no longer determine that you're going in the right direction because you can't reliably know that your vehicle's getting there. But what happens is you have to look at all the components and figure out where the misalignment is. So the courage is required in opening a dialogue, which is, as you said, Colin, in a relatively safe place, that you've committed some time to prepare that so people feel that they have the room to be able to say what's really there. Because thinking about this team that I worked with, when we pulled the rock up, we're mixing metaphors here, but
sorry, biology and automotive. Hope people don't mind.
There's the mechanics who are going to be listening, and there's going to be the biologists who are listening. So I'll go with the biology one. When we lifted the rock up, it was not pretty.
Yeah.
There was a lot of squishy, squirmy things under there.
Yeah.
And initially, nobody wanted to look. And it took some time to be able to go, it's okay. Each of these has a right to be aligned and living in this space, but we had to name them.
Okay.
And that's where the courage comes from a team leader, is to be able to go, whew, we might not want to talk about this.
Yeah.
But the importance is so vital that we do, because otherwise we are going to go off the road.
Yeah.
You reminded me of the work that we do around personal brand and around personal leadership toolkit and things, because I think if you can drill down on who you really are, right, and what is your personal brand, and what are your needs, and what are your values and your attributes and things like that, and how they connect to that organization, right? So when you say somebody was squishing around under that rock over here, maybe it was simply because they were under the wrong rock, right? So that honest dialogue will allow people to not sort of hurt that person, right, or vice versa, but just to allow where you're best serving and how you can best serve. And that's why we love this idea of the mini mission, right, the team mission, because then you can really focus and align to it, right?
And I think that the idea of that mini or that micro mission, if it exists together as a team, then I like to think of it as something that it does the heavy lifting for you. So then nothing is personal in that, then, because it's everybody's just holding themselves to what they've already agreed to, right? So if you're new
Right.
to the team, obviously that's, you need to be able to have the time to learn that. But if that micro mission is set in front of people and they work on it together, then they can take ownership of that. I think it's really interesting when we think about the culture that we are in, where it is not, I remember one time the three of us we were leading a retreat, and I remember someone in the retreat saying this phrase, and I've never forgotten it, and I've used it so many times. They've said that clear is kind. Sorry, excuse me. we can, I think there's a lot of value there to
yes.
earth in that statement around, if we're clear on what's important and on why, if we're clear on how we feel and owning those things, and clear on what we want to accomplish, that is the kindest way for us to lead people. Leading people in wondering and fending for themselves, we may think that it's allowing them to find, it's like giving them the grace to be able to figure out their way. But boundaries and clarity are what help us feel safe and help us show up as our best.
That's very true. And that clarity, that's like naming it, being able to be in that space and be honest in a kind way
Yeah.
is incredibly valuable, because
Yes.
that's the toxicity that you were talking about, Colin, that gets kind of embedded
Yeah.
is when things are left unsaid
Yeah.
and unspoken, and everybody kind of is waiting for something horrible to happen, because there is this atmosphere that it isn't welcomed.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. It's got to be part of woven into that mission, that micro mission, is that who we are together is important to be able to fulfill anything that we say we're committed to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also about, like,
Back to the.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like not kind of, because there's a balance there, because nice can be toxic too. Nice doesn't get things done. Kindness gets things done, but nice and kindness are not the same thing.
Oh, big important. I know I resonate with that one, because my modus operandi for years has been to be nice.
Yes.
Because if you're nice, you can kind of slip through things, but kind takes that courage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people that are listening today, and in particular, if they're either on a team or they're leading a team, and as we've been talking about the challenges of when things feel out of alignment, and if you know that, and you recognize it, and you want to understand how to lead through it, what are some of the things that we want to offer people today as tools that they can be using to help take the wobble off their team, to help their team's vehicle move a little smoother?
Well, there is a health check.
Yeah.
There is a willingness to ask the questions. How are you? And not just how are you, like we do in everyday conversation, but really checking in with the well-being of each member of the team.
Yeah.
And having those conversations in an environment where it is invited and encouraged as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially today, especially now, it feels as though 2023 at the end of this year, it's, sorry I interjected, but it feels as though it's more important than ever to go to that place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is
Sorry,
so
Crystal.
important. Yeah. No, it's good. Carol, and I know we're coming to the end of our time together, but there's something that you've brought up in the past when we've been talking about this, and it's a way that when we identify things, looking at what's good, but also the bad. Can you talk about that? Because this is something we are going to revisit in a future episode that we're planning. So can you give us a taste of what that is and help us learn how to apply that today?
So one of the pieces, and it's a really simple idea, is that once you name it, you can flip it and then move forward. So in the realm of considering something that is happening in the team, For example, I can say that there's never enough communication. We don't get to talk enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we flip that and consider, what is the positive opposite of that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's that there's open communication. There's an opportunity for everyone to have a voice.
Okay.
So we imagine a future where it is not what is happening, but it is the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the positive attributes of that we could move forward with?
Okay.
So it isn't toxic positivity. It isn't
Yeah.
like, forget this isn't happening.
Right.
It's to look at what the opposite of it would provide.
Okay.
So in a place where I feel silenced and unable to have a voice, a place where there is open communication and my communication is welcomed, would be an environment where I would thrive. So
Okay.
to move forward to that would be having the courage to put my hand up, and other team members who invite it. Oh, what would you like to say about this?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we name it, we flip it,
And we move
and
forward.
we move forward.
With a
Wow.
mission that's
With a mission.
tailored to your team.
Yeah, for a team.
Mhm.
I like that. And I think that that's it's a great place for us to end our conversation today. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
yeah.
And before you go, click subscribe, comment, like, share, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok. We're everywhere. So yeah,
We
be
are
in touch.
everywhere. Yeah, and don't forget, you can find us here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30. We're having live conversations, and this in 2 days from now we'll be talking about Thriving Thursdays, and we're going to be talking about how you can find your center and why it matters going forward. Thanks for tuning in.
See you on Thursday.